time to ride. We need a helmet. This one. Need a bike. That one will do. Gonna need some shoes, big dogs, and of course we need a GoPro. So, check one of these. We'll need this. We're gonna need. Whoa. Dare I?
Oh, there it is! Oh no! Oh no! Oh! Whoa! Yeah. Oh my god! Oh my god! Yeah. Whoa! Whoa! Oh. Are you okay?
Oh, dude. That was so...
That's all you had in you? Come on.
Oh, I got more.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm JT the Dusty Dutchman, and like many other mountain bikers, I've been using GoPros for many, many years to capture my riding footage, but as of lately, has either thought about or purchased a DJI Osmo Action. So obviously, my curiosity got the best of me once again, and I ended up buying the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro with a few accessories, and I've already done some testing with it. So today, we're gonna talk about the 3 main reasons why I bought this camera. We'll see how it stacks up with the GoPro, and then we'll discuss whether I think this is the new standard in mountain bike POV footage, or is it kind of more of the same? We got a lot to talk about today. So before we jump completely into it, a couple pieces of information. Number one, when I reference GoPros, you need to know that my experience has been from the 4 to the 12. So I don't have any experience with the 13, never bought one of those because I bought the DJI instead. Almost all the test footage we're gonna go over today was shot a couple weeks ago at the WinMan trails in Winchester, Wisconsin. One of my favorite places to go fat bike. The trails were in amazing shape, and the good thing about that weekend was we got a really good variation of lighting conditions, from kind of cloudy, overcast to bright sun, and we even did some night riding. So it's really gonna put this camera to the test. So while testing this camera, I made a lot of changes to the settings, mostly to try the different fields of view that this camera offers. But there's a bunch of important settings that I didn't change, that I left the same for everything, and I'll put those on the screen right now. And while you're reading those, let me also just say, please excuse my hooting and hollering like a child during a lot of these clips, but if you've never been fat biking in conditions like this, you don't have to go very fast to kind of be at the edge of traction. So you're kind of always at the edge of falling, which is just a lot of fun, and I guess it just brings out the kid in me. All right, here we go. The first of 3 main reasons that I bought this camera is battery life. Somewhere along the line where these cameras were getting better and better, the battery life was getting worse and worse and worse, to a breaking point for me, which was last November during the Iceman Cometh Challenge. I have no scientific data to back this up, but I have kind of learned that over the years, at the resolution frame rate that I always film at, the rule of thumb is kind of 2 hours. I get 2 hours on one battery of filming kind of on and off. So that's kind of my benchmark. But as the temperatures drop, so does the battery life. And I know this. So every year at the Iceman Cometh Challenge, I know it's about a 2 to 2.5 hour race. So I have to use the GoPro very sparingly, maybe a minute here, a minute there, so that I can actually record pieces of the race all the way to the end. Now this year, I did the same thing I always do, and about 45 minutes into the race, it was completely dead. So I didn't get to make a video, missed a bunch of cool shots, and that was kind of the big turning point for me to say that this is just not a viable option for me anymore, and I started looking at DJI more seriously. Now that was with one of the relatively new Enduro style GoPro batteries, which have a capacity of 1720 milliamp hours. Now on the flip side, the DJI new battery is 1950 milliamp hours, and they claim about 4 hours of recording time at 1080p. So So take into consideration that this is just my personal use case, but basically I would start in the morning with a full battery. We'd be outside filming and riding kind of intermittently all day, probably 5 to 6 hours worth, shooting at 4K at about 20 degrees. And at the end of each day, I still had like 40 or 50% battery left, in comparison to the GoPro, which I know I would have to swap in a new battery at least once throughout the course of that same type of filming in a day. Of course, there's a ton of different factors involved here, but kind of high level rule of thumb for me has always been, I get about 2 hours of runtime with the GoPro 12, but for the Osmo Action 5 Pro, I gotta agree with the marketing material. I would say 4 hours of runtime is legit. All right, main reason number 2 that I bought this camera is for the fields of view that it offers. And I'll be honest, I got this one wrong. So to determine whether this is gonna be my new standard in mountain bike POV, we gotta talk about what my current standard is, and that is this. Now, there are tons of different opinions on the best settings or the best field of view. This is just my personal favorite. I like the width because it's not too distorted, but it still gets a lot of the bike in, so you get that immersive feeling. There's a really good kind of accurate sense of speed, in my opinion. And then I like horizon lock. I like when the horizon stays level and the bike goes up and down the sides. So this is the field of view that I was hoping to replicate with the DJI Osmo Action 5, because there is one major drawback to this field of view with the GoPro. And that is that to achieve this field of view that I like so much, you have to use the Max Lens Mod 2.0. As you can see, this lens does protrude out from the camera quite a bit, and it is quite soft. So no matter how careful I am with putting this protective cover back on it, I can't stop scratching them. So to date, I've purchased 4 of these at $90 to $100 a piece. And that's crazy. So I'm trying to avoid that. Now here's where things get weird. So based on my initial research, I thought that I could get the same field of view that I know and love on the GoPro, on the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro, without any additional lenses. So let's get into some of this test footage and see if that's true. All right, let's get into some of the options here that are available in 4K 60. Again, this is no color correction of any kind. First up, we have horizon balancing, which is standard D-warp, and that's 17mm focal length. So it's a little narrow, but as you can see, it's supposed to, within 45 degrees, keep the horizon level. And if you look closely, when I hit these berms, there's like a little glitch or something that happens. And I don't know if I'm going over 45 degrees or if there's just something not quite right. I did recalibrate the horizon before riding, so I'm not sure why that glitch is taking place in the berms, but just for reference, wanted to show you what it looks like with horizon lock on with the GoPro Hero 12. As you can see, pretty smooth, looks really good. Next up, we got wide field of view with Rocksteady Plus stabilization, and once again, we have a focal length of 17mm. This looks pretty good. Still a little bit narrow for my tastes, but at least there's no glitching going on when I'm in the berms. It all is pretty smooth and steady. Next is the ultra-wide field of view with Rocksteady Plus stabilization, and it is also 17mm focal length. So yes, all 3 are the exact same width or focal length here, which I find strange. Still looks good, just a little narrow for my taste, so we'll move on to the next one. So wide and ultra wide, when using regular Rocksteady, are within 1mm of each other as far as focal length is concerned. So I skipped right to ultra wide. It's 11mm focal length. I really like it. It's got decent stabilization, and it looks very similar to the Max Super View that I'm trying to replicate. Digging a little deeper and looking at these side by side, you can definitely see the GoPro is just slightly wider, and also keep in mind, especially when you look at these vertical clips, that the GoPro is at max stabilization and it's still that wide of a field of view, whereas the Osmo Action 5 is actually at its lowest stabilization setting here, so less crop, and it still is not quite as wide. So obviously I got something wrong somewhere, so I started digging into it a little bit more again. Now, On the GoPro, the max super view was supposed to be 155 degrees wide. So that's what I was trying to replicate. Now the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro in ultra wide was also supposed to be 155 degrees wide. So why is it a little bit different? And then I found this disclaimer on the DJI website, and it basically says that while 155 degrees is the maximum optical field of view achievable, the actual field of view during shooting may vary slightly due to distortion correction and stabilization settings. So while it can achieve 155 degrees wide, it won't if you have any stabilization turned on, which of course I'm always going to be using Rocksteady or Rocksteady Plus. So that's why there is the difference between the two. So guess what happened next? Yep, another lens. This is the Osmo Action Boost lens, which as you can see is also really sticking out, just waiting for me to scratch it. But there is good news. Allegedly, this Boost lens is more scratch resistant than the GoPro Max Lens mod. Also, it is quite a bit cheaper. It's only $59, so that's good. But will it help me achieve that field of view that I am looking for? Let's find out. And here we go again. So there are only 3 options with the Boost lens, starting with horizon balancing again in standard, which once again, somehow, even with a different lens, is still 17 millimeters of focal length, and still the horizon is not very balanced, as you can see, with that jittering kind of glitching going on there in the berms. Next with the Boost lens is the wide field of view, 9mm focal length, and I gotta say this is probably gonna be my field of view of choice going forward. I really think this is the perfect balance of width without being too distorted, so this is looking really good. I'm pretty happy with this. Taking it one step further, we got Boost Ultra Wide, 7mm focal length, and DJI claims 182 degrees of width. This is as wide as it gets. It's just a touch too distorted for me. There's just a little bit too much body in it. Trying to compare and contrast 2 different companies' marketing materials and their specs when one uses more focal length and the other uses more degrees of width is definitely complicated, and it certainly confused me, but I wonder if that's kind of the point. And side by side with the vertical footage, we got the Boost Ultra Wide on the right, again as wide as it gets, next to the Ultra Wide on the left, which is as wide as it gets with the standard lens. Pretty similar. Again, on the right you just get a little bit more handlebar, you can kind of see the hands more frequently, and a little bit more body, a little more distorted. And the third and final main reason that I bought this camera is because of the audio. One of the hardest things for any action camera to deal with is wind noise, especially when it comes to mountain biking, because we strap these things to our chest, our handlebars, our helmet, and we go as fast as we can, and the product of that is usually wind noise, which makes a lot of clips almost completely unwatchable. And to make things more difficult, if you wanted to try to actually talk in your videos so that your viewers could actually hear and understand you while you're riding with wind noise, there really weren't a lot of good options until recently. So let's say you wanted to run an external mic of some kind, you know, like a lavalier mic or a wireless mic like this. Yeah, there was no way to plug it into this GoPro natively. There's no jack. So you had to use something like a media mod that would have a headphone jack in it, or some kind of dongle that would have to plug in, and then you'd have to plug in the receiver. And it was all very cumbersome and just kind of a mess. So the workaround for a lot of us was to put this foam cover on our GoPros, which would protect the mics and kind of eliminate a lot of the wind noise. The only downside is it made it more of a muffled sound when you would try to talk over the riding. It worked, but not great. So what makes the audio so much better on the Osmo Action 5 Pro? Well, a few things. First of all, the wind noise reduction actually works. I turned it all the way up to high, and I gotta say, it's actually pretty good. It eliminates almost all of the wind noise, and you can talk over it pretty well. Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh, made it. And if you want to take it a step further, DJI also sells external mics, just like the one that's on my chest here. But this is where things get interesting because this little nugget right here completely wirelessly connects to the Osmo Action 5 Pro. No receiver required. You can actually wirelessly connect 2 of these DJI mics to one action camera. And they're good for up to 400 meters away from each other, which is crazy. But that means you can have one camera, 2 mics, ride around with your buddy and talk while riding and capture audio from both, which is actually kind of cool.
Here we go. Big berm 1. Oh, this is a mess.
Oh my God. The second berm's way better, I think.
Big berm 2. That's clean.
Oh man, someone peeled off there.
Yep. All right, here we go. It's a roller coaster time, folks.
Yeah. Whoa.
Woo! Oh man, this is so good.
Whoa! Nice. Couple little side notes for you when using this camera for mountain biking. First of all, night riding. We went night riding. I tried it in night mode and in regular daytime mode. And I will say in both scenarios, I think it looks a little bit better than the GoPro at night in similar scenarios. I don't like that you have to physically turn the camera for vertical shooting, unlike the GoPro that you can keep it horizontal and just change it to vertical internally. So all that being said, will this camera be the new standard for me when it comes to mountain bike POV footage? Well, let's go through the pros and cons. So let's start with the cons. First of all, I'm kind of bummed that the horizon balancing really ain't so balanced after all. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Like I touched on earlier, I don't love that I have to turn the camera 90 degrees to get vertical footage. I do wish that I could have got that field of view that I like with the GoPro on the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro with the standard lens, but I guess at the end of the day, it is nice to know that when I do scratch this lens, at least it's cheaper. And a quick rundown on the pros, because there's a lot of them, honestly. The battery life is fantastic. The night shooting is a little bit better. The magnetic mounts are pretty cool. And having more viable audio options for this camera is huge. I love that I don't have to put a foam sock on this thing all the time. And if I want to run external mics, I can do it very seamlessly. Now, out of habit, I'll probably accidentally call this thing a GoPro still, but make no mistake, I will be running a DJI Osmo Action camera now for the foreseeable future. If they continue to improve on this and they keep their prices in line like they have been, this is a fantastic, very user-friendly camera, so I've officially switched. But what do you guys think? Did I miss anything? Like, I know this wasn't a super technical review, but what are your experiences with the Osmo Action 4 or 5? Or do you have a GoPro and you're considering switching too? Let me know in the comments. And as always, whether you bring a camera or not, don't forget to get outside and get on your bike, because good things will happen. And I'm gonna eat this candy bar that I've been staring at for the last hour. That's it for me. Done.